The heavy glass doors of the Pine restaurant swung open, but the freezing October wind did not cool the heat burning on my cheeks. Inside, 20 pairs of eyes locked onto me. Crystal glasses clinked. Silverware scraped against porcelain. "Look at me when I am speaking to you, Clara," my husband Brandon whispered. His fingers pinched my wrist under the white tablecloth, tight enough to leave purple marks. "You will stand up right now. You will pour my father a glass of wine. And you will apologize to him in front of everyone." My mother-in-law, Evelyn, took a slow sip of her Chardonnay. She smiled. Her eyes stayed cold. "Do not make a scene, dear," she purred. "A head nurse should know how to handle basic social manners." Arthur Collins, my father-in-law, leaned back in his leather chair. He adjusted his gold watch. He did not even look at me. He looked at Brandon. "If your wife cannot respect this family, Brandon, then you are not the man I thought you were." Brandon's grip tightened. His breath smelled of expensive bourbon and stale garlic. "You hear that, Clara? You apologize right now, or I swear to God, I am canceling the $3,000 monthly donation to your mother's cancer foundation tomorrow morning." The room went dead silent. The smell of roasted lamb turned my stomach. The soft jazz music overhead sounded like a buzzing fly. That was the exact moment the thin wire holding my life together finally snapped. But to understand how I ended up in that room, let us go back to where this nightmare really began. At 3 o'clock on a freezing Tuesday morning, the fluorescent lights of the Cincinnati General Emergency Room hummed overhead. My shoes squeaked against the wet linoleum floor. 12 hours on my feet. 3 trauma cases. 1 cardiac arrest that did not make it. My hands smelled of harsh iodine and bleach. My scrub top was stiff with dried sweat. I pushed open the heavy exit doors. The cold rain hit my face like tiny needles. I walked to my 10-year-old sedan, my knees aching with every step. The drive home took 20 minutes through the fog. The radio played low. The heater blew lukewarm air against my ankles. All I wanted was a shower and 4 hours of sleep before my next shift. I unlocked the front door of our suburban house. Darkness swallowed the hallway. The air inside felt heavy, stale, and cold. I kicked off my wet shoes. My socks soaked up a cold spot on the rug. I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. The sink was full. Greasy pans piled high. Crusted yellow egg yolks stuck to 3 white plates. A glass wine bottle lay on its side, dripping red liquid onto the clean granite counter. On the kitchen island sat a bright pink sticky note. I picked it up. Evelyn's sharp, looping handwriting stared back at me. "Clara, Brandon mentioned you are working late again. Try not to look so ghostly for the anniversary dinner tonight at the Pine. Arthur's business partners will be there. Wear something nice. Do not embarrass us." I crumpled the paper in my hand. I walked up the stairs, quiet as a ghost. The bedroom door was half open. Brandon lay stretched out across the king-size bed, snoring softly. The room smelled of cologne and cheap beer. I opened my closet. My uniform hung on one side. On the other side hung 3 old dresses. I had not bought new clothes in 2 years. My eyes burned. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped. Brandon stirred. He pulled the blanket over his shoulders, turning his back to me. "You are loud," he muttered. His voice was thick with sleep. "I just got home, Brandon," I whispered. "It was a hard shift." "Everyone works hard, Clara," he said into his pillow. "Shut the door. The light is in my eyes." "No, are you okay? No, did you eat?" Just silence. Cold, heavy, suffocating silence. This was our life. It did not start with shouting. It started with closed doors. It started with ignored text messages. It started with Brandon looking through me like I was made of glass. I paid the mortgage every single month, with my head nurse salary. $85,000 a year. I paid the health insurance. I paid the groceries. Yet, in this house, I was invisible. If I complained, Brandon would turn his back. He would stop speaking to me for 3 days. He would walk past me in the hallway like I was a ghost. He made me feel insane. He made me feel small. He made me believe I was the problem. I walked into the bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the faucet. Cold water splashed over my face. I looked up into the mirror. The woman looking back had dark, purple circles under her eyes. Her skin was pale. Her lips were thin and dry. She looked 50, not 34. Where was the girl who graduated top of her nursing class? Where was the sister who promised her dying mother she would build a happy life? She was gone, buried under dirty dishes, unpaid bills, and a husband who used silence like a knife. I pulled a small black notebook out of my work bag. Inside, I had logged every expense for 4 years. Every mortgage payment, every credit card bill I paid off for Brandon's failed real estate bets. Every dime. I opened the pen. My hand was steady. I wrote down one more line. October 12th. Paid $450 for Brandon's golf club dues. I closed the notebook. I zipped my bag. I did not cry. The tears had dried up months ago. I turned off the bathroom light and stood in the dark, listening to the rain hit the glass. Something inside me stopped bleeding. Something inside me went cold and clear. I was done being invisible. The heavy glass doors of the Pine opened into warmth and heavy perfume. The dining room smelled of seared steak, melted butter, and expensive wine. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over white tablecloths. Soft piano music floated through the air. I smoothed my gray dress. It was clean, but it was 3 years old. I stepped toward the private dining room. My heels made no sound on the thick carpet. 20 people sat around a long table. Men in tailored black suits, women wearing diamonds that caught the light. In the center sat Arthur Collins, holding a glass of scotch. Evelyn sat beside him, her blonde hair pinned up perfectly. Brandon stood near the head of the table, laughing with a man in a navy blazer. Brandon saw me first. His smile vanished. He walked over and grabbed my upper arm. His fingers pressed hard into my flesh. "You are late," he hissed. His breath smelled of bourbon. "I had a trauma patient, Brandon," I whispered, keeping my voice level. "I came as fast as I could." He pulled me toward the table. "Sit down. Do not embarrass me." Evelyn set her fork down with a loud clink. She looked at my dress, then at my face. She offered a tight, fake smile. "So glad you could join us, Clara," Evelyn said. Her voice was loud enough for the whole table to hear. "We know how busy hospital nurses are. But at events like this, a little effort with makeup goes a long way." A few people at the end of the table chuckled politely. Arthur cleared his throat. He set his glass down on the table. The ice cubes clinked together. "Family is about respect," Arthur said, looking around the room. "And respect means knowing your place. In business, if a partner disrespects you, you cut them off. In a family, it should be the same." He turned his eyes to me. Cold. Hard. "Last week, Clara tried to correct me about my real estate investment in front of my associates." Arthur continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "A nurse trying to lecture a businessman. It was disgraceful." The table went quiet. A waiter stopped mid-stride, holding a silver tray of bread. Brandon leaned over my shoulder. His hand pinched my wrist under the tablecloth, squeezing until my fingers went numb. "Look at me when I am speaking to you, Clara," Brandon whispered, his voice trembling with anger. "You will stand up right now. You will pour my father a glass of wine. And you will apologize to him in front of everyone." I looked at Brandon. I saw the fear in his eyes. He was not a powerful man. He was a scared boy trying to impress a cruel father. I told the truth, Brandon, I said softly. I do not care about the truth, he snapped, leaning closer. You apologize right now, or I swear to God, I am canceling the $3,000 monthly donation to your mother's cancer foundation tomorrow morning. The threat hung in the air like poison. Arthur smiled. Evelyn took a slow sip of her Chardonnay. They waited for me to bow my head. They waited for the tears. They waited for the yelp of a beaten dog. I looked at Arthur's arrogant grin. I looked at Evelyn's cold eyes. I looked at Brandon's tight, desperate jaw. A deep silence settled inside me. The fear was gone. The hurt was gone. Only cold, clean clarity remained. I reached down into my leather purse. I did not pull out a handkerchief. I did not pull out a compact mirror. I pulled out the small black notebook. I opened it to the last page. Then I pulled out my checkbook and my silver pen. The room watched in silence. Brandon blinked, confused. My hand was completely steady. I wrote out the numbers cleanly. I signed my name at the bottom, with a firm stroke. I tore the check from the book. The paper made a sharp, crisp rip. I placed the black notebook in the center of the table, right next to Arthur's wine glass. Then I laid the check on top of it. Beside the check, I unclasped my diamond wedding ring and set it down. The gold band clinked against the glass tabletop. What is this? Arthur frowned, looking down at the paper. That is a check for $36,000, I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. That is the exact amount Brandon transferred to my mother's foundation over the last 12 months. Brandon's face went white. Clara, what are you doing? I stood up straight. I pulled my shoulders back. I looked Arthur straight in the eye. I will not apologize for telling the truth, Arthur, I said clearly. And Brandon, my salary as a head nurse paid 100% of our mortgage for 4 years. It paid 70% of our food. It paid for your health insurance while you played golfer. That $3,000 a month you gave my mother's foundation, it came from the money I saved you on your credit card debts. Evelyn gasped. A man across the table covered his mouth. Brandon reached for my hand. Clara, stop. I pulled my arm back, out of his reach. The debt is paid in full, I said. Every single penny. You no longer own my dignity, Brandon. And I officially quit being your unpaid housekeeper. I turned my back on the table. I walked past the waiter. I walked past the mahogany bar. I pushed open the heavy glass doors of the Pine. The cold October rain hit my face. It washed away the smell of expensive perfume and stale wine. I took a deep breath of the damp night air. My chest expanded fully for the first time in 4 years. My hands were not shaking. I walked to the curb and pulled out my phone. I opened my ride app and booked a car to a small extended-stay hotel near the hospital. Then I opened my contacts. I tapped on Brandon's name, hit block, and slid the phone into my coat pocket. The black sedan pulled up to the curb. I opened the door, stepped inside, and did not look back once. The morning sun streamed through the sheer curtains of my new 40-square-meter studio apartment. The air smelled of fresh pine, lemon floor cleaner, and dark roast coffee. No stale beer scent. No lingering odor of cold garlic sauce. Just quiet, clean space. I sat at a small wooden table, staring at 3 manila folders. The first folder held my divorce filing. My lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, sat across from me, tapping a pen against her legal pad. She was a sharp woman with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Brandon's lawyers sent a letter, Sarah said. Her voice was dry and calm. They claim you abandoned the marital home. They want you to cover half his credit card debt. I opened my black notebook. I pushed a stack of bank, receipts toward her. He ran up $40,000 on margin trades and golf trips, I said. My voice did not shake. My salary paid 85% of the mortgage and every utility bill for 4 years. We sell the house. We split the equity 50-50 after his personal debts are carved out of his share. Not a penny less. Sarah looked at the receipts. A slow smile touched her lips. Good. You kept immaculate records. I will file the financial separation motion today. Leaving the lawyer's office, I walked 3 blocks down Elm Street to a salon. The bell above the door chimed softly. The air smelled of sweet shampoo and warm hair dryers. I sat in the swivel chair and looked into the large mirror. My dark hair fell past my shoulders, dry and split at the ends from years of neglect. My eyes still looked tired, but the hollow panic was gone. How much are we cutting? The stylist asked, lifting a pair of silver shears. All of it, I said, up to my chin. The steel blade snipped. Dark locks fell onto the white cape like heavy autumn leaves. 20 minutes later, I looked in the mirror again. A sharp, clean bob framed my face. My neck felt light. My shoulders looked straight. I stopped playing the victim. I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. Anger was a heavy coat, and I took it off. Next came my body and my mind. Every morning at 6, before the sun rose over the Ohio River, I ran along the paved trail by the water. Cold air filled my lungs. Sweat washed the lingering fatigue from my skin. I bought 3 simple, tailored suits in navy, charcoal, and cream. No more faded scrubs outside the hospital walls. 3 years ago, I had paused my Master of Health Administration degree to pay for Brandon's failed real estate firm. The university registrar's office was my next stop. I paid my tuition using my separate savings account. Every night after my 12-hour hospital shifts, I sat under a desk lamp reading organizational theory and healthcare finance until my eyes burned. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, I went to an auto repair shop on the south side of town. The air smelled of motor oil, hot iron, and diesel exhaust. Metal tools clattered against concrete. Kevin Collins crawled out from under a Ford F-250 truck. He wiped grease from his forehead with the back of his gloved hand. He wore a stained navy blue jumpsuit. He saw me and froze. "Clara," he said softly. He pulled off his work gloves. I did not think you would want to see anyone with my last name." "You are not your father, Kevin," I said, stepping past a stack of heavy tires. "And you are not Brandon." Kevin looked down at his boots. "They are telling everyone you went crazy. Brandon is drinking a lot. My dad is furious because the bank is asking questions about his dealership loans. The whole house is a war zone." "Let it burn," I said quietly. Kevin let out a rough laugh. "Yeah, honestly? Good. I am quitting this shop next week. I want to build my own commercial fleet repair business, but my dad says I am wasting my life as a grease monkey." I looked Kevin straight in the eye. "Do not let them turn you into another ghost, Kevin. You have skill. You have integrity. Start your own business. Build something real." Kevin blinked, his throat moving as he swallowed hard. "Thank you, Clara. Really." 8 months passed like a swift current. The auditorium at the University of Cincinnati smelled of polished mahogany and fresh roses. Orchestral music echoed off the high ceiling. Hundreds of graduates sat in black gowns and velvet caps. "Clara Mercer," the dean called out over the loudspeaker. "Master of Health Administration, graduating with high honors." I walked across the wooden stage. My black heels clicked with a steady, confident rhythm. I shook the dean's hand. I accepted the heavy paper diploma bound in red ribbon. I did not look into the crowd for Brandon. I did not look for Arthur or Evelyn. I did not need their applause to make this real. My happiness was my own responsibility. Now, the next morning, I walked into the chief executive officer's corner office at Cincinnati General. The glass walls offered a sweeping view of the city skyline bathed in clear morning light. A thick leather-bound binder lay on the glass desk. I picked up a black fountain pen. I signed my name firmly on the dotted line. Clara Mercer, MHA, Director of Nursing Operations. I closed the file. My mind was completely clear. The past 4 years were not a tragedy anymore. They were just the stone that sharpened the blade. The autumn wind howled against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of my 9th-floor apartment. Inside, the room smelled of dry cedar, fresh lavender linen, and warm chamomile tea. Silence felt like a velvet blanket over my shoulders. Down below on Elm Street, Brandon's world was crumbling into dust. Without my head nurse salary paying his mortgage, car loans, and utility bills, his polished life had collapsed in weeks. His real estate firm missed 3 bank payments. The sheriff's office posted foreclosure notices on his front door. His father, Arthur, refused to lend him a single dime, calling him a useless failure before changing the locks on the family estate. Evelyn had fled to her sister's house in Florida after shouting matches that echoed down the block. At 7 o'clock on a cold Tuesday evening, my door buzzer rang. I stepped up to the video intercom. Brandon stood in the carpeted hallway outside my door. He looked terrible. His navy suit jacket was wrinkled and stained at the cuffs. His dark hair was greasy, uncombed, and sticking up on one side. His eyes were bloodshot, surrounded by dark, purple hollows. In his right hand, he clutched a drooping bouquet of red roses wrapped in wet cellophane. In his left hand, he held a faded photo album from our first year of marriage. Beside him in the hallway stood a tall woman in a tailored charcoal wool coat. She carried a thick leather briefcase. I recognized her immediately. It was Karen Whitfield, my late brother Thomas's estate attorney from Seattle. I unlocked the heavy deadbolt and opened the door. The hallway smelled of wet wool, cheap whiskey from Brandon's breath, and rain. "Clara," Brandon gasped, stepping forward. His voice trembled with a pathetic, desperate energy. "Thank God you are home. Look, I brought the photos from our trip to Maine. I brought your favorite roses." He tried to push past the threshold, but I stayed firmly in the doorway. Brandon glanced at Karen, his jaw tightening. A bitter, ugly sneer twisted his mouth. "So this is why you left?" Brandon spat, glaring at Karen and then at my luxury apartment building. "You found yourself a wealthy patron? Who is paying for this place, Clara? Some old doctor at the hospital? You acted so pure at the restaurant, but you had a backup plan the whole time." Karen Whitfield did not flinch. She raised one gray eyebrow and adjusted her silver-framed glasses. "I am attorney Karen Whitfield from Seattle, Mr. Collins," she said, her voice sharp and cold as an iceberg. "I represent the estate of the late Thomas Mercer, and if you do not step back from my client's doorway, I will have building security remove you for harassment." Brandon froze. His mouth stayed half open. "Thomas, the computer guy who died in Washington." "Step inside, both of you," I said calmly. "Let us finish this once and for all." They walked into my living room. Brandon looked around the sleek hardwood floors, the plush gray sofa, and the soft warm lamps. He set the wilting roses on the glass coffee table, his fingers twitching. Karen sat on the edge of an armchair and unbuckled her briefcase. She pulled out a thick stack of legal documents stamped with official red wax seals. "Mr. Collins, as you may know, Clara's older brother, Thomas Mercer, passed away 6 months ago from pancreatic cancer." Karen began, laying the papers out in a precise row. Thomas was the chief software architect for a cloud infrastructure firm in Seattle. He was an extremely wealthy man. Brandon swallowed hard. His eyes darted to the legal papers. How wealthy? Thomas established a living trust prior to his passing, Karen said, ignoring his question. The total value of the liquid accounts, technology patents, and commercial real estate in the trust is $12 million. $12 million. The words hung in the warm air of the living room like a physical shockwave. Brandon's face went completely white. Then, in a fraction of a second, the blood rushed back to his cheeks. His eyes widened. His chest heaved. He dropped the photo album onto the rug. He dropped to his knees right beside the coffee table. He reached out, trying to grab my hands. Clara. Oh my God, Clara. Brandon sobbed, tears spilling over his cheeks. $12 million. We are saved. We can pay off the real estate debts. We can buy back the house. We can start over. I am so sorry for how my father treated you. I was stressed, Clara. I was under so much pressure. I love you. You know, I have always loved you. He looked like a starving dog begging for scraps beneath a banquet table. It was ugly. It was pathetic. I pulled my hands back, tucking them into the pockets of my cardigan. Read the attached letter, Karen, I said softly. Karen pulled a single sheet of cream-colored stationery from a blue envelope. The paper bore Thomas's neat, square handwriting in dark blue ink. Karen cleared her throat and read aloud, Dear Jackie, if you are reading this letter, I am already gone. I built this $12 million trust 6 months ago when the doctors gave me my final diagnosis. I wanted to give it to you immediately, but I watched how Brandon and his family treated you. I saw how they used money as a leash to strangle your dignity. Brandon's sobbing stopped. He sat back on his heels, staring at the lawyer. Karen continued reading. I instructed Attorney Whitfield that this trust must remain locked and completely hidden from you. It carried one strict legal condition. The $12 million could only be released to you after you personally signed divorce papers, left that toxic house, and walked away using your own strength and self-respect. I refused to let my wealth become a reason for you to stay in a cage, or a target for greedy parasites to bleed you dry. You had to save yourself first, Jackie. You had to prove to yourself that your honor was not for sale. Karen folded the letter and laid it gently on the table. Silence descended upon the room. Deep, suffocating silence. Brandon stared at the floor. His jaw hung slack. His eyes were wide with a horror far worse than bankruptcy. The brutal truth struck him like an iron bar across the chest. Clara had not left him because she found out about $12 million. Clara had left him when she believed she had nothing. She had handed over her wedding ring, written a check for $36,000, and walked out into the freezing rain with $40 in her pocket and her dignity intact. She did not need his money. She did not need Thomas's money. She was free because she chose to be free. Brandon looked up at me from his knees. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked small. He looked hollow. He looked like a ghost inhabiting a wrinkled suit. I looked down at him. I waited to feel anger. I waited to feel triumph. I waited to feel revenge. I felt nothing. No hatred. No pity. No heat in my veins. He was just a stranger who had accidentally occupied 4 years of my past. I walked over to the wall panel and pressed the security button. Front desk. A guard's voice crackled through the speaker. This is Clara Mercer in 904. I said, my voice smooth and level. I have a guest who is leaving now. Please send someone up to escort him off the property. On our way, Miss Mercer. Brandon did not fight. He did not say another word. He stood up slowly, his knees shaking, and walked out the door with his head bowed. Karen closed her briefcase and gave me a quiet, respectful nod before following him into the hallway. The heavy oak door clicked shut. The deadbolt slid into place with a sharp metallic snap. I walked to the window and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights stretched out to the horizon like golden dust scattered on black velvet. I pulled Thomas's letter to my chest. I pressed the rough paper against my heart. Warm tears finally spilled over my eyelashes, running down my cheeks and dripping onto my collar. They were not tears of grief. They were not tears of pain. They were the clean, sweet tears of a woman who was finally completely free. The winter air tasted crisp and smelled of damp earth, fresh asphalt, and cold rain. The sky above Cincinnati was a pale, clear gray, free of storm clouds. I sat in a small diner down the street from Cincinnati General Hospital. The vinyl booth smelled of roasted coffee beans, fried eggs, and warm maple syrup. The soft hum of a refrigerator mixed with the gentle clink of silverware. Across the Formica table sat Brandon. He looked completely different. The tailored navy suit and gold watch were gone. He wore a plain gray cotton sweater and dark jeans. His dark hair was cut short and neat. The arrogant, tilted jaw had vanished, replaced by a quiet, grounded posture. His hands bore small calluses along the palms. "Thank you for meeting me, Clara," Brandon said. His voice was soft and steady, devoid of the sharp, demanding edge it had carried for 4 years. "You look well, Brandon," I said, holding my warm mug with both hands. The steam brushed my chin. "I am working as an entry-level logistics clerk at a freight warehouse down by the river," he said, staring into his black coffee. "I sold the sports car. I moved into a small, one-bedroom apartment near the train tracks. It was brutal at first, realizing I had to pay my own rent, cook my own meals, and clean my own floors. I spent the first month in complete shock." He paused, taking a slow, quiet breath. "My father called me last week," Brandon continued, looking up. "He wanted me to sign a false affidavit for his dealership tax audit. He threatened to cut me off forever if I refused. For the first time in my life, I looked at him through the phone and said no. He screamed and hung up on me. But when I put the receiver down, my hands did not shake. I felt lighter. I listened quietly, watching him. He was no longer playing the victim. He was no longer blaming his father, his failed real estate firm, or me. He was finally standing on his own feet and taking responsibility for his life. "I did not ask you here to beg for money or a second chance, Clara," Brandon said, looking me straight in the eye. "I know that bridge is gone. I know I destroyed our marriage. I just wanted to say, thank you." "Thank you?" I asked softly. "If you had not walked out of that restaurant," he said, his voice thick with quiet emotion, "I would have stayed a coward forever. I would have spent my whole life pleasing my father and destroying you. Leaving me was the hardest thing you ever did, but it was the kindest. I forgive you, Brandon," I said. My voice was clear. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I choose not to carry anger in my heart." He nodded, a faint, genuine smile touching his lips. He stood up, placed his coat over his arm, paid his own bill at the counter, and walked out into the crisp afternoon air. I stayed in the booth for a few minutes, watching the steam rise from my cup. Forgiveness felt like opening a heavy window in a dusty, dark room. The cool air washed everything clean. 2 miles away, on the south side of town, a new steel building stood under the afternoon sun. A large blue aluminum sign above the bay doors read, "Collins Commercial Fleet Repair." Kevin stood inside the central bay, holding a heavy torque wrench. The air smelled of new rubber tires, fresh floor sealant, and clean machine oil. 2 large city delivery vans sat high on hydraulic lifts. I walked into the shop. The metallic echo of my heels alerted him. Kevin looked up from a wheel hub and smiled, wiping his greasy hands on a red shop rag. We just signed our second municipal maintenance contract today. Clara, Kevin said, his eyes bright with pride. The city transit department is sending 6 fleet buses next Monday. You built this, Kevin, I said, looking around the bright, immaculate shop. When $12 million enter my life, I refuse to spend it on luxury items or empty revenge. Instead, I use my brother's legacy to create a real, lasting impact. I established the Eleanor Mercer Cancer Care Foundation at Cincinnati General, providing free lodging, meals, and medical transportation for low-income chemotherapy patients. And when Kevin presented his detailed business plan for a commercial fleet repair shop, I stepped in as an angel investor, providing the startup capital he needed. I am paying back the principal loan on schedule, Clara, Kevin said proudly, pointing to a neat leather ledger on his desk. Every single dollar, with interest. I know you are, I smiled, because you have integrity. Leaving Kevin's shop, I drove my sedan out toward the eastern hills overlooking the river. The sun began to sink below the horizon, casting deep orange, violet, and gold light across the autumn trees. I felt no lingering bitterness toward Arthur or Evelyn. Their hollow world of fake status had collapsed under its own vanity, but that was no longer my story to read. I pulled off to the side of the scenic overlook and rolled down my window. I took a deep breath of the cold, sweet wind blowing across the water. My mind was completely still. My heart was light. My life belonged entirely to me. I put the car in drive and moved forward into the dusk. I walked into my new office at Cincinnati General the next morning. As Director of Nursing Operations, I walked the halls with a calm, steady stride. The staff knew me as a leader who listened, who stayed calm in crises, and who protected her nurses with unwavering strength. On weekends, Kevin came over to help paint the shed at my small house near the river. My life was no longer defined by what I had endured. It was defined by what I had built. I looked down at my hands. They were smooth, strong, and steady. They had signed divorce papers. They had held diplomas. They had written checks for foundations. They had built a life out of ashes. I was no longer the invisible wife. I was no longer the victim of silent rooms and cold threats. I was Clara Mercer, and I was completely home. The late afternoon sun hung low over Lake William, casting a warm golden light across the calm, glassy water. The autumn trees along the shoreline glowed in vibrant shades of amber, crimson, and deep copper. A soft breeze rustled through the dry leaves overhead, filling the air with the rich, earthy scent of pine needles, wood smoke, and damp river soil. I stood at the edge of my wooden dock, holding a warm porcelain mug of dark chamomile tea between my hands. The water lapped gently against the cedar pilings beneath my feet. Lap, clink, lap. The rhythmic sound was slow, steady, and peaceful, like a quiet heartbeat in the stillness of the woods. My small stone house sat 50 yards behind me on the grassy slope. It had a wide cedar porch, a steep shingled roof, and a fieldstone chimney that blew a thin stream of sweet oak smoke into the clear blue sky. Behind me, the screen door creaked open on its brass hinges and snapped shut with a wooden thud. "Aunt Clara," 8-year-old Luke shouted, his sneakers thumping rhythmically across the wooden planks of the dock. "Look what Kevin made for us." Luke held up a small model sailboat carved from light pine wood. Beside him walked his 10-year-old sister, Emma, clutching a miniature brass compass that caught the sunlight. They were Thomas's children, my late brother's legacy, whom I had taken under my wing to raise with warmth, joy, and peace. Behind the children walked Kevin. He wore a clean blue flannel shirt, dark denim jeans, and sturdy work boots. His hands were clean, though a faint hint of machine oil still lingered around his short fingernails. "The wind is perfect for it today. Clara," Kevin smiled, kneeling beside Luke on the edge of the dock to help him set the tiny wooden boat into the water. I watched them laugh as the little boat drifted smoothly across the golden ripples. I took a slow sip of warm tea. The heat spread through my chest, relaxing every muscle in my shoulders. I looked down at my reflection in the still water beside the dock. My short, sharp bob caught the amber sunlight. My skin was smooth, clear, and healthy. The dark, purple hollows that used to linger under my eyes were gone, replaced by a bright, steady gaze. I wore a comfortable cream-colored cashmere sweater, tailored charcoal trousers, and soft leather boots. I was 35 years old. My body was strong. My mind was completely still. I remembered the woman who used to stand in a dark, cold kitchen at 3 o'clock in the morning, scrubbing yellow egg yolk off dirty plates while her husband slept. I remembered the nurse who felt invisible, who shrank her own voice just to keep a silent room from exploding into angry threats. I did not hate Brandon anymore. I did not hate Arthur or Evelyn. Hate was a heavy iron chain, and I had dropped it into the deepest part of the river months ago. When Brandon walked out of my life, he took his insecurity and cowardice with him. When Arthur and Evelyn collapsed into their own financial lies, they took their fake status with them. Their words, their judgments, and their actions no longer held a single grain of power over my peace. I had stopped playing the victim the exact moment I signed my name on that $36,000 check and walked out into the cold rain. I had stopped blaming the past and had taken full, unyielding responsibility for my own happiness. I had earned my master's degree with my own late-night sweat. I had stepped into my executive role as director of nursing operations with my own competence and dedication. I had established the Eleanor Mercer Cancer Care Foundation with my own vision, ensuring that no patient ever felt abandoned or helpless in their darkest hours. The $12 million Thomas left in the trust was a magnificent gift, but it was not my savior. My true savior was the quiet, steady voice inside me that had finally whispered, "No more." The sun dipped lower toward the tree line, painting the sky in wide streaks of violet, rose, and brilliant gold. The golden hour had arrived. The warm light bathed the lake, the stone house, and the wooden dock in a rich, amber glow. Everything the sunlight touched looked soft, pure, and luminous. Emma walked over and gently slipped her small hand into mine. Her fingers were warm and soft. "Aunt Clara," she asked softly, looking up at the golden sky, "are you happy now?" I looked down at her bright, innocent eyes. I looked across the golden water. I listened to the quiet rustle of the autumn leaves and the happy laughter of Luke and Kevin at the far end of the dock. I felt no fear of tomorrow. I felt no regret for yesterday. "Yes, Peanut," I whispered, squeezing her little hand gently. "I am completely free." I lifted my face to the golden light. The cool autumn wind brushed against my cheeks, carrying the sweet scent of wild pine, burning oak, and open water. I stood tall, breathing in the quiet air, surrounded by genuine love, grounded in my own quiet strength, and standing proudly in the light of my own life. My story was no longer a tale of survival. It was a testimony of resurrection. The woman who once begged for scraps of affection under a cold table was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who owned her past, governed her present, and welcomed her future with open arms. The water continued its slow, rhythmic lap against the dock. The golden sun dipped beneath the horizon, but the light inside me remained bright, unshakable, and eternal. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.